Hello students. So in this presentation, I will cover nature of psychological data, types of data, some important methods in psychology, observation method, and types of observation. Nature of psychological data. Let us see what data means. So you all have heard of the term data many times. So whenever we say data, we are indicating it to a plural sense, because in singular way it is known as datum. It is called as datum. So when we say data, we mean that data are the information which relate to the individual's covert or overt behavior, their subjective experiences and mental processes. This is in terms of psychological data. Alright. So data forms an important input in psychological inquiry. And in better understanding what is psychological data, we must go through certain features of data. So point number one, data approximate the reality to some extent and provide an opportunity to verify or falsify our ideas, notions, etc. And they are located in a context and are tied to the method and theory that directs the process of data collection. In other words, we can say that data are not independent of the physical or social context, the persons involved, and the time when the behavior occurs. So not all people behave in exactly the same manner in the same situation, as we all know. So here, while collecting data, we must know and understand that it is not independent of all these things. Okay. Now, for instance, you may have seen that many people behave differently, and even we ourselves have seen that we behave differently at home, we behave differently at school, we behave differently while in office or in a group. Yes, even you all will agree with me when I give you this example for you people that you may hesitate while talking in front of your parents and teachers, but you will not hesitate in the same way when you are with your friends. Yes or no? So point number two, the method of data collection. It may be survey, interview, experiment, and the characteristics of respondents, which means that it might be individual or group, young or old, male or female, urban or rural. So these are the things that also influence the nature and quality of data. Alright. Point number three, data in itself does not speak about reality. Inferences have to be made from data. So when we talk about data, and once we collect data, we have to understand this fact that data in itself does not speak reality. In fact, we have to give meaning to whatever data we have collected. Okay. This just means that a researcher attaches a meaning to the data by placing it in its proper context. Okay. Next, we have types of data. So in psychology, different types of data or information are collected. So some of these types are, let us go through one by one. Point number one, demographic information. Whenever you hear about the word demographic, remember that it is saying about the personal information. So basically, demographic information, it includes personal information like name, age, gender, birth order, number of siblings, education, occupation, marital status, number of children, locality of residence, caste, religion, parental education, parental occupation, and family income, etc. Number two, Physical information. Physical information includes information about ecological conditions, that means the regions from where a person belongs, that is hilly, desert, forest region. Then it also includes mode of economy, housing conditions, size of rooms, facilities available at home, in the neighborhood, in the school, mode of transportation, etc. Point number 3, physiological data. In some studies, physical, physiological, and psychological data are collected about height, weight, heart rate, level of fatigue, galvanic skin resistance, which is also known as GSR, electrical activity of the brain measured by electroencephalograph, that is EEG, blood oxygen levels, reaction time, duration of sleep, blood pressure, pattern of dream. And in case of animal studies, there is collection of amount of salivation, running and jumping rates, etc. Point number 4, psychological information. The psychological information may be collected in relation to certain areas such as intelligence, personality, interest, values, creativity, emotions, motivation, psychological disorders, illusions, delusions, hallucinations, perceptual judgment, thought processes, consciousness, subjective experiences, etc. So these are the 4 types of data being collected, but that also depends upon the study and the research, the nature of the study and research as required by the researcher. It is not that in every study or for every study the researcher will collect all these types of data. No. Now, in order to study the relation between television and aggression, watching television and increase in aggression, the person will not collect all the informations. The person will not collect any galvanic skin resistance or level of fatigue or height or weight. No, they will not collect the data from that, isn't it? So that's why, depending upon the study, the nature or the types of data are also being chosen. Okay, and this information could be from the point of view of measurement, where somewhat it is crude, like in the form of categories such as high or low, yes or no, and ranks which provide ordinal data, that is first, second, third, fourth, or scores on scales. So we also obtain verbal reports, observation records, personal diaries, field notes, archival data, etc. under data collection. Okay, and such types of information is analyzed separately using qualitative methods. And we will come to the qualitative methods later in this chapter only. Okay, so far we have come across the wide variety of data that is being collected in psychological studies. Let us see some of the important methods in psychology now, because all this variety of data cannot be collected through a single method of inquiry, isn't it? So in order to collect data in relation to the studies being conducted and to come into a conclusion, one have to use different methods and accordingly. So there are observation method, experimental method, correlation method, survey method, psychological testing, case study. So these are some of the methods, okay, under which the data are being collected. So the main characteristics of these methods are to be discussed in the following slides. So we will go through one by one all these methods, all these 6 methods in details. Let us go through the first method, that is observation method. Now see, in our daily life, you remain busy with observing numerous things throughout the day. And many times we do not take notice of what we are saying or what we have just seen. We see, but we do not observe. Yes or no? Just think about it once. Now, when we saw observation, observation is the intentional attending, examination, and recording of an object, events, or processes as it occurs without any formal manipulation of variables operating in the events under study. So it refers to looking for certain categories or response in systematic manner. So basically, observation is a very powerful tool of psychological inquiry. And of course, it differs from that of day-to-day observation. Now, how it differs, let's see that how a scientific observation differs from day-to-day observation. Basically, it has three factors. Okay, the first one is selection. So psychologists do not observe all the behavior that they encounter. Rather, they select a particular behavior for observation. Now here, I want to give an example so that it becomes more clear for your understanding. So for example, you may be interested to know how children studying in class 11 spend their time in school. Okay. Now here two things are possible at this stage. As a researcher, you might think that you have a fairly good idea about what happens in school, and you might prepare a list of activities and go to the school with a view to finding out their occurrences. On the other hand, you might think that you do not know what happens in the school, and by your observation, you would like to discover it. Alright? The second factor is recording. Now, while observing, a researcher records the selected behavior using different means, such as marking tallies for the already identified behavior whenever they occur. And tallies, you all know, you all have done in your class 9 and 10 mathematics also, statistics, mathematical statistics, where you have to tally. If you go to, if you go back to the previous year maths, then you will remember that tally marks you have done, that you have to draw certain lines, that 1 2 3 4 lines, and in the fifth line you have to cut it, if you'll remember. So this is one of the way to record the observed behavior, how many times it is uh, taking place, okay, how many times the behavior which you want to say has occurred. That is one way. Or instead of marking tallies, you might also take notes describing each activity in greater detail by using shorthands or symbols. There can also be photographs and video recording while observing a behavior. So basically, in scientific observation, it is very important that you record the behavior which you are studying. Okay. Number three, analysis of data. So after the observations have been made, after the observations has been recorded, the psychologists analyze whatever they have recorded with a view to derive some meaning out of it, which is again very important from the point of scientific observation. Now here it is very important to have the observation skill, because if a lay person goes and says that I am doing observation, then maybe it will not be accurate. So observation, it is a skill which requires a very rigorous practice and training. Okay, so in order to make good observation, there must be a skill behind it. And a good observer knows what she or he is looking for. Now see here, at this point, you have to note over here that what are the features or what is the nature of a good observer? Okay, so a good observer knows what she or he is looking for, whom she or he wants to observe, when and where the observation needs to be made, in what form it will be recorded, and what methods will be used to analyze the observed behavior. So, in making good observation a skill, these are the factors necessary for a good observer. Next, we have types of observation. So, on the basis of mode of observation, there is naturalistic observation at first. So, when observations are done in a natural or real life settings, it is called naturalistic observation. In this case, the observer makes no effort to control or manipulate the situation for making an observation. And these types of study are done in hospitals, school, railway station, and other public places. That is in a natural setting, okay, where there is no requirement of any manipulation. But it also has certain advantages and disadvantages. So advantage of naturalistic observation method lies in the variables which can be studied in natural conditions as they occur in real life, and also the results are generalizable. And the disadvantage is that there is no control over extraneous variables and it is very time consuming. So when we say that there is no control over extraneous variables, now see, when a study is done in a natural setup, of course, some of the factors might hampering the study. Now, when a person goes and observes in a school setup, maybe the extraneous variables might be that the researcher wants the observation of behavior in field. Okay, but the students of a particular class are not allowed to go to the field. Now, in this case, of course, this is the extraneous variable which is hampering the study because the researcher wanted the observation done in a natural setup where the student of a particular class is required to go to field. But from the other hand, they are not being allowed. So in this case, of course, there will be no study at all. He have to change his observation pattern. He have to choose some other students, or maybe he have to go to another school maybe. So this is just an example. Okay. So this is what means that there is no control over extraneous variables. Now he cannot manipulate the variables over here. The second type of observation on the basis of mode of observation is controlled observation. So see, one is naturalistic observation, which is done in natural and real life setting, and another is the controlled observation where it is done in laboratory condition. Okay, and here examiners have ample control over the extraneous variables. The goals and procedures of observation are predetermined in controlled observation. So for example, a psychologist studying the aggressive behavior of children in their play group with some goal decided beforehand. So in this situation, the goals are decided beforehand only in controlled observation. As the name itself suggests that the extraneous variables or any other variables are under control. Okay, and it is done according to a planned routine, we can say, planned schedule, we can say. Again, here also certain advantages and disadvantages are there. So advantage of controlled observation is that other unimportant variables do not affect the observation. And disadvantage, laboratory experiments are artificial and do not correspond to reality. Of course, there this disadvantage lies where the laboratory experiments are actually artificial because it cannot be matched to that of the real life setups. It's just virtual. Type of observation on the basis of investigator's role, we have participant observation, where the investigator actively participates in the activities of the group to be observed. So investigator may already be the member of a group and decide to observe, or may join the group to observe the event. Now sometimes the group members are not aware of the identity of the observer, and this is also known as disguised participant observation, and sometimes they are aware of it, known as undisguised participant observation. And in this case, observation procedure is usually unstructured. Okay, so basically if uh, you want to observe the pattern of interaction between teachers and students in a particular class, you may go and sit among the students and then observe the student teacher relationship from there, being the participant in the classroom. Okay, now what is the advantage of this method? It is done in natural setting and results are close to reality and can be generalized. Disadvantage, it is usually unstructured, so it is not very precise and it is very time consuming. So even observers bias affects the results. When we say observers bias, that means every person have their own subjective view. Yes, own subjective interpretation. So here observers bias may affect the result. So in case the observer doesn't like the attitude or doesn't like the environment, so that will affect the result from his or her point of view. Okay, next we have non-participant observation. In non-participant observation, what happens is that observation is done in natural setting, but investigator does not remain a participant in the group's activities. So it is usually structured, and different tools like video camera, one-way mirror, etc. can be used to record observation. Now see, it is very important to record observation in scientific observation. In non-participant observation, the observer is not an active participant among the group members. So what he or she does, the observer, may record the observation through video camera or also one-way mirror. Now one-way mirror is a mirror where the observer can see from outside, but from inside the participants cannot see the observer. Understanding the point? So these are some of the tools which can be used to record observation, and this is how simply sometimes the observer watch from a distance. Even watching the activities of a class in a school, if you all see, nowadays in many schools there are these cameras being installed in the corridors maybe, or even in the classrooms. Cameras are being installed, isn't it? So why the cameras are being installed? Just to watch the activities of a class of the students, isn't it? So that is one kind of non-participant observation. Your principal or your teacher is not there with you all at that time, but then they can view from their own room through the camera. Okay, now here again there is advantage and disadvantage. So advantage of this method is that it has structured procedure, so data is precise and reliable. Even observer's bias is controlled. And disadvantage, if the investigator is watching from a close distance, subject may become conscious. Now this subject consciousness, subject is the one on whom the observation is being done. Okay. Now, uh, even in participant observation, there is this disadvantage that, see, if a person just comes from nowhere and sits among you people, how you will feel? You will feel a little bit of uncomfortable over there. And also, if you come to know that the person, the observer, is there to look after your behavior, look after your actions, your activities, then you also become active and aware at that moment, and you all will not behave in the way where you naturally are behaving, the way you behave. When you become consciousness, when you become conscious, what happens is that we behave according to what other people want us to see. So that is hampering the study also. In the same way, in non-participant observation too, if a person from a very close distance just observes you in the sense, of course, for you people, it will be like that person is staring at us. Why that person is staring at us? So when somebody is staring even from a close distance, of course, you will become conscious, and then it hampers the studies. You will not be your own true self in that way. Okay. So what we got here, the types of observation we have on the basis of, one is participant role, mode of investigation, and then there is investigator's role. Okay, there is this uh, natural and controlled observation, and then there is this participant observation and non-participant observation. So these are the four types of observation. Okay.